Thank you all very much. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa, and welcome to EWTN Live. We bring you guests from all over the world, but before we do, I want to introduce another guest to you, Jeanette DeMello, who works for the National Catholic Register, and she has a couple of good things, including congratulations are due to y'all for
press awards at this year's it's the Catholic Press Association. Mm-hmm. They have a conference every year, and they give out awards to all different kinds of media. But one of the biggest awards you can win is the Newspaper of the Year, and for the second year in a row, for national newspapers, we won Newspaper of the Year. So it was
congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. That's good. And also, y'all are doing a very special edition for something that I remember from 50 years ago.
I don't, but
yes. Say not, the young people like you talking about the ancient history of 1968.
And of course, we're talking about Humanae Vitae, which was issued today. It's the encyclical that deals with the Church's long teaching on contraception. Yep. The Register just did an issue. It's the July 22nd print edition that covered this anniversary, and so we were trying to show all of the ways that this teaching has come along since 1968, July 25th, 1968, and it turned out to be a very nice issue that highlights not only the problems that were around Humanae Vitae's issuing the dissent. So we chronicled the history and the history of dissent, and some of that dissent remaining today. Yeah. But also the strength of theology of the body to help explain Humanae Vitae. And
because Pope St. John Paul looked to Pope Paul VI as a spiritual father. Sure. They were very close, and he had a lot of influence from almost to be Saint Paul VI.
Soon to be, exactly.
Yes, and you'll cover that too.
In fact, that's something coming. I was going to mention that in October.
Well, we want to encourage everybody to sign up for it. They can get free
three free months.
3 months subscription.
Exactly.
See how they like it.
Exactly.
Of course they will.
Of course they will.
Yeah.
And it's award-winning. I mean, come on.
The award-winning, and we'll encourage you to go to ncregister.com and learn more about it, because in this world you get a lot of news that has a different bias than you do from Catholic news, and this is a wonderful, wonderful, nonpartisan. It's to uplift your faith, and we encourage you to do that.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Thanks
for
having
being
me
here
on.
with us. Appreciate it. And we'll keep up with how the Register is doing and how folks respond to it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Father.
We're going to come back in just a couple of minutes with our guest for tonight, so please stay with us. Welcome back. We have a guest that I just want to mention also that today is the feast of St. James the Apostle, and that's connected to tonight's program. You've seen our guest before on this program, as well as on a couple different specials on EWTN. He has an apostolate called Eagle Eye Ministries that seeks to inspire young Catholics by providing them an ever-deepening, tangible connection to Jesus Christ and to their Catholic faith. This guest has guided people on pilgrimage to Hawaii to learn about Saint Damien of Molokai, not how to ride the waves, and to Ireland to learn more about the faith and the life of Saint Patrick. Now he and another group of pilgrimage embarked on an ancient pilgrimage known as the Camino de Santiago, that is the way of St. James. And you'll see the EWTN special highlighting this pilgrimage tonight at 10 p.m. It's called Discovering James, Saint of the Way. And here to tell us more about it, please welcome from the community of St. John, as well as from Eagle Eye Ministries, Father Nathan Cromly. Father Nathan, good to have you back. You're getting around now, aren't you?
Well, we're busy with the new evangelization. This is what it takes.
That's it. And, you know, we mentioned here that this is an ancient pilgrimage. How long has the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela? Compostela is the name of the city,
right, where
the shrine is. It's in Spain. Mm-hmm. And how long has that pilgrimage been going on?
It started around the 9th century. Mm-hmm. In its earliest origins, and following routes or roads that predated it from the Roman times and even pre-Roman times. The most ancient roads going to the sea for trade routes. Mm-hmm. And the Christians began to use these to get to the tomb of the bones of the Apostle St. James. Mm-hmm. So we're really touching a couple different layers with this experience. The spiritual journey of a participant, the physical journey through time of history, the cultural journey into a foreign land whose cultures are layered by that history. Mm-hmm. Then you also just have the layering of one's own personal life and their relationship with Christ. And it's such a rich and deep draft of human experience that I just didn't want to fail to bring young people there so that they could see their roots and be connected with something greater than them in terms of tradition, as well as a gateway, so to speak, into spirituality.
Spain itself is an extremely important nation. This has been the place where, for many ways, Europe and Africa have met and clashed, going back to ancient times. I mean, there were the original people of Spain. In fact, did you know this, that the last Neanderthals lived in Spain?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, see, I guess not. See, now that is trivia. But there were many other ancient peoples in Spain, and then the Carthaginians conquered it, and they were seagoing people, so they had these routes so they could get products from the interior to the coast where they had ports. The Romans conquered it and fought the Carthaginians. But Christians walked this path, these roads, for 1,000 years and plus, almost going on 1,200 years. And so this is, and the back and forth, the exchange of ideas and growth of faith, this has been an extremely important part of European history to make this pilgrimage.
Well, the UNESCO, for example, actually recognizes two of the routes to the tomb of the Apostle St. James as World Heritage Sites, precisely to recognize that.
Yes.
And I think it's neat because even another layer would be that of astronomy, because the way of St. James, Campos Stellae, Compostela, means the field of the stars. And it's thought that denotes the fact that the way of St. James follows the same way as the Milky Way is laid out in the sky. So as you walked at night, you'd look up and you'd see the way of the stars even pointed to this holiest of destinations.
Yeah, yeah. So this was, think it's only second to Rome as far as European pilgrimages sites. Is that correct?
It sounds very accurate to me. It was certainly packed when we were there.
Yeah, yeah. But here's the other thing too, and this is what I liked about your video because I got a chance to preview it. You make a distinction between the many people who are walking this way of St. James as tourists on an adventure, distinct from the pilgrims who are going for an experience of Christ and conversion. Talk more about that distinction between being a tourist and a pilgrim.
Our group with Eagle Eye Ministries was certainly a pilgrimage. That is, we endeavored to use this experience as a journey that was physical and spiritual at the same time. So our journey from the starting point to the end was to discover Christ and His call for our life through that process of daily walking and the experiences that we had. Many of the people on the trail, I would even say most of the people, didn't do that explicitly. They were going there, some of them for sport reasons and exercise. Other people were doing it just out of curiosity or just as an outdoor hike. But there was something I saw in their eyes that was, for me, very wonderful. They were on that particular trail because there was some sort of connection of a thing that they were looking for in that ancient way. And of course, we know that who they were looking for was God, even if they didn't know it or admit it. And the camaraderie, the friendship, the politeness of those people that we met really spoke to that inner search that I think was in all of their hearts. So although it's very much a slice of a world that's forgotten Christ in many ways, there's a search for Him that's palpable and makes it very easy to evangelize and talk and have good conversations, even with those who don't profess anything who are there.
Let's take a quick look at a clip from the video called Discovering James. It's going to be on at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on EWTN. Let's take a look at a little clip from it.
So this James the Greater, James the son of Zebedee, he plays a very important role in the life of Jesus. He's clearly one of the most important members of the group of the 12 apostles.
James and John, certainly, and Peter were Jesus' closest companions. I mean, if you consider the apostles as sort of the A-list, they were the super A-list of the A-list of Jesus' best friends.
James is listed among these 3 special disciples that sort of get a front seat to some of the major events that we read about in the gospel story.
The healing of Peter's mother-in-law, Jesus healed her. The healing of Jairus' daughter.
He comes to Jesus asking for help. Of course, he wants Jesus to heal his daughter, but she passes away. Jesus takes with him in Mark and Luke Peter, James, and John, puts everybody else out and raises the little girl to life.
The transfiguration of Jesus on Mount Tabor, which was to show them His divinity, the glory and power.
Only 3 disciples are taken up the mountain with Jesus, Peter, James, and John. And then again in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus withdraws to pray and He takes with Him 3, Peter, James, and John.
Now, in those comments, they don't say it, but the painter of that wonderful image does. Even though they were in the Garden of Gethsemane, that was one time the 3 of them fell asleep. You know, so they
Not like our viewers.
no, hopefully not. Hopefully not. But it's but this is the Saint James that we're celebrating today, and you actually arrived in Compostela for the feast day, did you not?
It was spectacular because it was such a place. Everyone who was there for St. James, even though they came for the party, the crowds, the firework display, so to speak. When then we had that mass, the formal mass on the Feast of St. James, there must have been 10,000 people outside the cathedral wanting to get in. The line was stretching back for hours. And it was beautiful because it testified to the way that architecture, tradition, liturgy, arts, all speak about this transcendent mystery that encompasses our life. And the people were looking. I think for me and for many of the pilgrims, this was one of the neat insights that we got into our call to evangelize. And that is that the modern world is very much looking for what we know in Christ Jesus. It's not as if, even in the opposition in some eyes, they all long for that mystery that makes thousands flock to that church to be dazzled in the beautiful mystery that surrounds them, who is, of course, Christ and his love.
Yeah, that's a very important thing to note, that throughout European history and other places too, that love of Christ evoked a love of beauty. Yes. Because Christ, who is the truth personified, also is beauty. That's St. Augustine talks about beauty ever ancient, ever new. And it inspires Christians to come up with truly beautiful places and things and art. And one of the stunning elements of that church, as I recall, is it's famous for its censer,
right,
where they have the incense. Tell us about the censer.
I got to see it firsthand. It's amazing. And I have a picture of standing next to it. The original censer dates back about 300 years, at least the version that I saw of it. There may have been one that was before that. And it's probably 5 feet tall. Big, huge thing. It takes, I think there were 6 full-grown men to lift it off the ground by a rope. And then they swing this the whole length of the church. And it's amazing the amount of attention that draws from the people because of that quest for beauty. Here you have a church who is robust and proclaiming Christ in every way that she can, even the Lord as a sweet-smelling fragrance who is offered to the Father.
Or like in Psalm 141, that may our prayers go up like incense at the evening sacrifice. They put 80 pounds of incense in that censer.
It took them quite a while to get it going. And
yeah,
they have to bring it up and then to get it swinging. And I don't know the actual length, but it would look like well over 150 to 200 feet of a swing on this.
Yeah. So, and as you say, it gets attention and draws the sense of the whole church offering itself up like incense. And making it, that's one of the ideas behind incense. In the Old Testament, you always offered your sacrifices with incense. And this idea of the sweet-smelling incense that accompanied sacrifice has been, and the sacrifice of prayer, this is why we do that. Well, they do it. I don't know of any censer bigger than that anywhere else in the world.
Pretty sure it's the biggest.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, Father, it's only
they
one
don't
of
have one like that in Texas.
It's only one of the many lessons that I think it gave to our American pilgrims, and that's the power of a lavish that's been given to Christ there. Images bedecked in gold, wrought silver everywhere that you looked. Huge censers like we spoke of, massive organs, the procession itself of the bones of St. James that they do only on his feast day, which was accompanied by hundreds of people and musicians, and we went out into the square, and there was something that
you got to take part in that.
I was so honored to be able to follow. I could see the bones right in front of me the whole way carried in procession. it was a very touching thing. My community is the community of St. John, who of course is the brother of James. So there was an affinity that we were feeling as part of our community, being there in his footsteps. But I think that was one of the ways that a pilgrimage helps people. I really want to recommend people look into doing these. It gets you in touch with a form of worship that gives a life to our spirituality that goes beyond the necessary. It's actually what is the unnecessary is the most necessary of things when it comes to love.
And it's also a time when a person who is praying, again, it's not a tour. It's where you get a chance to go up and take pictures and say, I was there. But it's rather going to a place with a spiritual goal. And you discover a lot about yourself as you pray along the way, right? This is a very important part of the process of pilgrimage. And the ancient pilgrimage to Santiago was oftentimes given as a penance for serious sin over the centuries.
It was very warm, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
We all began by carrying our bags, and then pretty soon we had them shuttled from one place to the next. At least the wise did, and then everyone else just, you started off with way too much, and you finished with far less. And therein was a great spiritual lesson. Exactly,
because this is one part of life. You know, we come in here naked with nothing. We acquire all this stuff, and then we go out with just the stuff in the casket.
That's right, and the experiences of soul. And there's the pilgrimage. We lost a lot physically. You had calluses and blisters and difficulties and trials, but each one of them built you up spiritually as you overcame them. Each mountain that we went over, every day there was another mountain to climb and then go down the other side of, was another lesson of inner growth as we met those challenges. And there, of course, is where Christ and his cross takes on a real meaning, because you feel like you're really carrying one.
Yeah, no, that's an important element of pilgrimage, and making sure that it's a time of prayer and not sightseeing.
Yes.
That's very important. And this is something that I think is also worth noting. The Vatican Council in Lumen Gentium especially emphasized that we are a pilgrim church, because all of the church, the whole church, is on a pilgrimage toward heaven. Earth is not the ultimate goal for us. This is our way, and we're on a pilgrimage to a specific place, heaven. And we learn from St. Catherine of Siena that it's heaven all the way to heaven, even when you're suffering. That you saw that suffering as part of the journey and part of the pilgrimage, right?
It's almost like one of God's creatures, so to speak. You know, that He uses, and it's an instrument. You could say that at least, that He uses to sculpt that inner person, and to free us from a lot of the attachments that we have. You had to leave the attachment to your own country, your attachment to your own language. You had to leave with nothing but what you had in your sack as to suffice, and make fellowship along the way, relying on the good graces of others, hospitality. It's a real metaphor that corrects a lot of the individualism and materialism that a lot of us are encumbered by spiritually. And so that's where, having lived that experience, for many of our participants, it was a discovery of why God leads us the way that He does, because He leads us very much on a pilgrimage through life.
In St. Catherine's line that is heaven all the way to heaven, doesn't mean that everything goes without pain and everything is just, you're floating on a cloud. Pilgrims, did you float on a cloud during the pilgrimage?
we wish we had.
Yeah, but you did. You're walking, and it's hard, but even that takes on a new meaning in light of the pilgrimage goal. And that's true with life, that all the pains and difficulties are seen as part of heaven if you get there. Now, I have the Pacwa corollary to St. Catherine. She didn't say this is all my idea. But if it's heaven all the way to heaven, I assure you, it's going to be hell all the way to hell. That people who may have thought that they had a wonderful, good stuff, but they were mean and selfish and materialistic, they will see all of that as hellish. And if you don't believe me, watch some of those reality shows where they're preparing 16th birthday parties and certain bridezillas and all this stuff. And you see how miserable they are to their special day. That's, that's a good example of it being hell all the way to hell. Or the rich man in the gospel story of Lazarus, in Dives. So let's show another clip of Discovering James, Saint of the Way. Again, it's going to be on at 10 p.m. in its entirety, but let's take a look at this clip.
The last of the four sort of special looks was the agony in the garden, because Jesus wanted them to also see that to be transfigured, they would have to suffer, they would have to drink of the same cup that he drank of, and that was part of being part of his closest group, but also a disciple of his.
We need to carry each other in prayer in a special way today, lifting up one another's spirits, and we need to push ourselves through so that when we get there, we've really accomplished that inner journey that we need.
Are you able to drink from the cup? Are you able to be baptized with the baptism that I'm to be baptized with?
But they're also called to do certain things that would not be easy.
Let's clap our hands like the saints going to heaven. We are bound for Jerusalem, shoulder to shoulder, our elbows locked together in fellowship, and we're going to walk to the promised land as one family.
So, this is a DVD that shows the connection between the meaning of St. James, the meaning of pilgrimage, and then your own experiences as well. And I think that's an important thing to keep in balance when you're on a pilgrimage.
Yes, our pilgrims, each one had their own journey through this small little church that we formed at Eagle Eye Ministries. So, in other words, a lot of us live only with an experience of our parish, where the priest speaks for 7 minutes and is finished, and the Mass is wrapped up in 50 minutes, and you go on just with one of those encounters per week for 20, 30 years, thinking that that's the power of Christ, when in fact, if you could break that into a smaller group and then intensify that encounter of prayer in a way that's more personal, you could wake up the soul. And that's what Eagle Eye tried to do, and that's what we try to do continually, is to wake up the soul of our participants. And we got to watch that transformation happen in each one of them. By the end of the trip, we all had a story of how Christ met us on the way. And we left that experience, like the pilgrims on the way to Emmaus, transformed.
Yeah, this is, I've been blessed to be able to go on a lot of pilgrimages over the years of my life, and you really do discover a lot. And it is one way to think about making retreat, even, that you are getting away from your everyday life and you're getting into, in a certain sense, as you do a pilgrimage, you're getting into another world, a world different from your everyday life, and one where you are discovering more about Christ and his saints. And the insights oftentimes stay with you for many years, if not your whole life.
It's also a great technique to reach out to the young people in our families. A lot of times grandparents or parents say, how do I jumpstart my faith? Well, if you allow them to do it in the context of a journey, like this hiking trip, it's full of young people. I mean, full of them. So this is a great technique to help people to see how real that encounter of Christ can be. You can feel it. It's part of your physicality, and therefore speaks a language that a lot of our young people need in order to go deeper in that encounter.
Yeah, and it gets it away. The issue of faith is not just about, oh, mom made me go to church. I don't want to. I want to stay in bed. Whereas when you're in this other world, you know, of this journey, this way that's set apart for the journey to Compostela and to St. James, then you get a different perspective. And that also becomes a great image of the spiritual life of the whole church. As we're on our pilgrimage to heaven, we always have to keep ourselves in a certain way distinct from the other forces in our culture and our world.
And united. And maybe that's one of those
with each other.
Points with each other, because
yes.
you don't want to walk that way all by yourself.
No.
You go connected, and from the difficulties with blisters to backpacks that are too heavy to just feeling like you need to talk with somebody, there are so many moments of encounter that reveal to us through the people around us another place and presence of Christ. And I think that there is just such a silent way the gospel is preached and permeated. It makes it very easy as an evangelizer to pick up on that and then to say, this in fact is what God wants for us. Yeah. And if we follow Christ, we follow in a pathway of communion. It's very appealing.
Yeah. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with some of your questions and comments. So please stay with us. And I just want to mention that in addition to this one, this pilgrimage to Santiago, you can go to our EWTNRC.com and see Father Nathan's other pilgrimages on DVD to Ireland and to discover St. Patrick, and to Hawaii, to Molokai Island, to discover St. Damien, who took care of the lepers. And the lepers don't live on Molokai anymore, do they?
There are just two who were very small children at the time, but yes, there's no more leper colony there.
No.
But don't forget our trip to New Zealand. Also,
that's right, New Zealand. You
discovering
did that too.
Tolkien. Who's not a saint, of course, but we went to the journey of the Lord of the Rings and Tolkien.
A fine Catholic and a writer of great. I almost forgot that. Because I like that one too, because I've been in a lot of those. I've been to New Zealand and loved it. It's a beautiful country. So, but that was before they did the movie. You ready for some questions?
I'd love some. Yep.
Good. Let's start off with this lady. Ma'am, where are you from?
Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas, yes. And actually, you've been on pilgrimage with me before.
Yes, I recognize that Last Supper.
Yep. So what's your question?
Okay, Father, is there an age limit to this pilgrimage that you're talking about? I see a lot of young people there, and I'm kind of interested, but I don't know if I'm too old for this thing.
Well, what about people in their 30s like this lady?
I wish.
There were all ages on this pilgrimage, ma'am, and there are so many different ways for folks to make it. You can, for example, arrive at the very last stop, and there were some that just walked that one day, and that itself was enough of the journey for them. So all the ages were there. It's true that a lot of young people did it because it lasts for 500 miles of walking. But at the same time,
as a matter of fact, you can actually even go beyond that, because some of these routes would go all the way up into Germany.
Yeah.
You know, so people, but
One
yeah.
group came from Lithuania carrying a life-size cross the entire road from Lithuania all the way to Santiago Compostela. So, I mean, people can really, so you need to be a little bit robust for that. But
Yeah.
all ages can go, because the real meaning is to kneel there at the foot of St. James the Apostle and ask for his blessing as you accompany Christ on the way. And
you know, it's interesting too, because Lithuania is a country that has suffered horribly under the Nazis, under the communists, all of that. So it's been for them to carry a cross after they, as a nation, like many other nations in Europe, have carried a serious cross, is remarkable. We have a caller. Hello, Chuck. Where are you calling from?
Oh, Fredericksburg, Texas.
I know you, Chuck.
Yes, you do.
How are you doing?
Well, I'm getting old and decrepit, but I'm still upright and above ground.
Yeah, well, God bless you, but I'm probably not too far behind you. So, Chuck, what is your question today?
Oh, you're still a kid.
I don't
Anyhow,
think so. What's your question?
My question is, St. James was the first apostle who was martyred.
Yep.
And I thought he was martyred in Rome or somewhere in that vicinity.
Okay.
I didn't think that he was martyred in northwestern Spain or Portugal.
Let's take a look at that, Chuck. That's a good. As a matter of fact, that's some of the issue that's brought up in the show tonight. But what you got there, Father? Set us straight.
Acts chapter 12, it says he was beheaded there in Jerusalem.
Under Herod Agrippa the First,
Year
in
42.
42.
42.
I think I think Herod Agrippa died by 43. But anyway, it was early 40s. Herod Agrippa was best friends with Caligula. Excuse me, Claudius, not Caligula, with Claudius. He was best friends with Claudius, the emperor. So he got back there. But yeah, so Herod Agrippa the First cut off his head in the early 40s. And so what's Spain got to do with this?
Well, according to the history that we know, or at least some of the historians, he would have gone to Spain after the Ascension and preached there. Then returned back to Jerusalem, where he suffered martyrdom. Mm-hmm. And so from there, you know, there's a legend that his body was carried by a boat, kind of miraculously, up to Spain, where then it was placed in the ground. Light was emanating from the place. Mm-hmm. There was a dream and a vision where it was James's body. It was there. They built the church there. And so there are different accounts of how that could have happened. Mm-hmm. But that's, in the end, the body of St. James is believed and attested by the church anyway to be there at that location.
I haven't seen, did you see any studies on the bones themselves?
I have not, no.
Okay, I haven't either.
But having been there, his presence is there.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's one of the things that you also see, Chuck, is, for instance, St. Mark had his body brought by Venetians, sailors from Venice, who captured it from a church in Alexandria and brought it to Venice during the time of the Muslim invasions. And then the same thing happened to St. Nicholas, who was born in Myra, which is in Turkey. Used to be a port city. That's all silted up. But then Italians brought his relics from Turkey to Bari, Italy. And now they've been given back. There's a Church of St. Nicholas.
There's something beautiful to think, you know, to consider that the people of Spain were so touched and grateful for the presence of that apostle, that they claimed him as their patron. So regardless of the way that it could have happened, what a neat testimony to the devotion to the saints and also to the filial kind of nature of the proclamation of the gospel. These people wanting their spiritual father there with them to continue to watch over them.
You know, and it's also possible that this would be something of speculation, but if the pilgrimages started in the 9th century, that would be a time when it was still possible. That was the Umayyad period, transition from the Umayyads to the Abbasids. And that was a very dangerous time in Muslim history. And it may be that the relics were rescued around that time and brought by boat over to Spain to keep them out of the hands of the Abbasids. The Umayyads had allowed pilgrimage, but the Abbasids became more problematic. We have another question here. Ma'am, where are you from?
Rochester, New York.
Great town. And what is your question?
Well, I'm wondering if there was anything surprising along the way that you were especially grateful for.
So good surprises.
You know, I think of the many things that I encountered along the way, the people of Spain themselves and the presence of Our Lady and how predominant she is in that culture. She found ways to visit us in our group every day, from very incredibly beautiful statues to the way that the people spoke of her, and then just the way that the culture bears beauty, dignity, kindness in this wonderful combination. I think I was surprised the most by the heart of Catholic Spain. Just being able to encounter that culture every day woke me up to a deeper appreciation of myself. And then, like I said, there's something very special of a gift of Mary, the mother of Jesus, as you walk on the way that is Christ, that you almost find her like that song, come with us on the way. Mary, take us by the hand and lead us on the way through life and through the pilgrimage.
Sure, sure. No, yeah, Spain is a culture that has great respect for honor and dignity. At the same time, it's very hospitable and a place of great, they enjoy
long meals.
Long meals.
They love long meals late at night.
But the food is so good, it's no wonder they enjoy them so much.
And the company is so wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. We have another caller. Hello, Patricia.
Hello, Father Mitch.
Hi, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Newcastle, Delaware.
Great. And your question?
Well, I just want to thank you and Father Cromly for giving us this program on St. James. I have two questions. The first one regards the censer that is swung on the Feast of St. James. What is the significance behind the ceremony, and when did it originate? And the second question regards the starting points for the pilgrimage. I've heard that there is more than one. Do either you or Father Cromly know how many starting points there are and what countries they originate in?
Thank you very much, Patricia. Great set of questions. So what is the significance of the censer, and about when did that start, you know?
Well, I'll let the historical aspect especially be over with my historian here. The significance of it and what it surrounded. Some people say that practically it was to also help sanctify the place with a lot of odors that would have accompanied people who walked for months at a time and filled the church close to packing.
They did not bathe.
They say these things, who knows, but it makes sense logically, it sure does.
Europeans describe how they did not bathe.
It's now certainly become more of a display than anything else. There's uniforms and there's the swaying, and everyone's taking their iPhone out and taking pictures of it. Yeah. But the deep significance of it is an honor and homage to God. Yeah. A massive structure with 80 pounds of incense, putting smoke through a whole church, is there to show the majesty of God. Yeah. Now, for the starting points to the pilgrimage, there's 4 major routes. We did just one of them on our pilgrimage.
Where did you start?
We started in Lisbon, Portugal. Okay. And then we went through Fatima, and then we went up through Porto and straight up there. We did the Via Portuguesa, the Portuguese way. Mm-hmm. There's also the Via Primitiva, which is the original way from Oviedo. And then there's
Oviedo being a city in the northwest.
Correct. Then there's
Spain.
the way that comes from France, and then the northern routes. So those four, the way of the north, the way of France, those four are the biggest ones. Now there's a lot of little ones in other places. Germany has, as those four routes kind of were connected by other countries. I spoke about Lithuania. Germany has a starting point. France has starting points. Portugal has starting points. There's even a starting point in Italy. So you have something so old has a lot of smaller traditions.
Sure. And yeah, I don't know when that use of that censer was, though I do remember that years ago, EWTN did a special about that church, and that was the first time I'd ever seen pictures of the swinging of that great censer. And I'm sure you can find some of that online. If you looked at it, it is truly impressive at how large and how it almost seems to be a wild swing, but it's quite controlled. Yes. They've done this before, and it really is just filling this huge church with very tall ceilings. Fills it with the smell and smoke of incense,
which is of course Christ.
Right.
It's the smoke symbolizes our prayers, also symbolizes Jesus himself who fills that place.
Well, there's that great line in 2 Corinthians that we're this procession, and the aroma of Christ fills it. And he's thinking of old Roman processions where they would have incenses they brought captives from wars and such. But and he says how we are an aroma of eternal life for people with faith, but for those outside, it's an aroma of death, just like it would be for the prisoners in Roman processions after wars. Well, let's take another question from our studio audience. Ma'am, where are you from?
I'm from Birmingham, Alabama.
Great. And your question or comment?
I want to know what the daily routine was like on the pilgrimage.
Very good. Wow, that's a great question. At Eagle Eye Ministries, everything that we do is pointed towards a deepening of a relationship with Jesus Christ. And so you cannot deepen that relationship without prayer. Yeah. The walking was only an extension of Holy Mass, only an extension of the encounter we had with Christ during adoration. So every day we would have Mass, every day we'd have a holy hour, and we actually chanted the offices, morning prayer, evening prayer, and midday prayer as we walked. So we would stop in fields, under trees, just like the original pilgrims, and there bring that praise of Christ. And that by doing that, we were able to integrate, into Christ the social element of being together, the physical element of the Camino itself. It was an experience of Catholicism. And that's what we do throughout everything that we do at Eagle Eye. And I think so many other places in evangelization. You don't limit the proclamation of Christ to an idea. You show how that he permeates through everything. But we do that really through a very intense life of prayer.
That brings out another aspect of pilgrimage and the Christian pilgrimage through life going to heaven. The faith permeates every aspect of life the way family life permeates a part of every day. You're not just doing an abstract concept of how it feels to be family, but you're cleaning the house, you're cooking for each other, you're doing the yard tasks, you're talking to each other, arguing with each other, all the things that just permeate the day with your family. And this is another sign or symbol of the church as family on its pilgrimage, as the life of the pilgrimage permeates every day.
We were blessed on our particular pilgrimage. We had about 4 families who came with us on our actual pilgrimage.
Like what parts
Father,
of the family?
daughter. We had father-daughter, we had husband-wife, we had grandfather with his granddaughter, and then we had a mother, father, and 2 children who were with us on the way.
How old were the kids?
They were in their teenage years, so they were okay.
They could walk and all that. Mm-hmm. Good. And that did they talk about that experience amongst themselves? How that affected their family life?
Bonded their family. Pilgrimages are just a terrific pedagogical tool for bringing Christ into people's lives. And absolutely.
And I remember hearing a man named Gary Smalley talk about how one of the most common experiences of strong families is that they go camping together. And it's not just the action of the camping, but that they have stories to tell amongst themselves for years to come about the misadventures usually that go on during a camping trip. And I'm sure that that's going to be the same for the people making a pilgrimage.
For any one of us, it's when we encounter challenge that the greatest parts of ourselves are summoned.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think in general, in our Catholicism today, maybe that's why Christ leaves us with so many challenges.
Yes.
St. James the Apostle was a man who had a lot of passion in his soul. One of the first ones to follow Christ, top of the mountain of the Transfiguration, the first apostle who was martyred, who walked to the ends of the earth, so to speak, a finis terrae.
As well as a brother, as we heard in today's gospel, who tried to schmooze Christ. Put us at your right hand and your left hand. And they didn't, we don't know about, Jesus said, I can't guarantee that. But we do know that of all the apostles, James is the first to die as a martyr, and John is the last to die. They're bookends of the apostolic witness of their lives and death. So that's a good thing to bring out.
Yeah, and I would think that that's, under his patronage, I think today we have a light for all of us. We say, why does God allow our way of our life to be so difficult? Difficulty is a gift from God that allows us to go deeper in our faith and in our relationship with him in a way that ease and comfort doesn't.
That's right.
We certainly discovered that on this pilgrimage.
I'll bet. All right, Discovering James, Saint of the Way with Father Nathan Cromly, CSJ, Community of St. John. Premieres tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on EWTN. You can also go to EWTN.com for airtimes and information what other times it's going to air, or purchase a copy of it at EWTNRC.com. So it's great to have you with us, and like you to join me in giving a blessing to our audience. May Almighty God bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you and lead you in all of your ways by his peace, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And by the intercession of St. James, lead you on your pilgrimage all the way to heaven. Now, again, we can bring Father on here and have the presentation of his experience of pilgrimage only because this network is brought to you by you. It's how Mother was inspired by our Lord Jesus to set this up. So keep us in between your gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill, and we'll be able to pay our summer bill collectors all summer long. Thank you.